OSPF builds an understanding of first our local area, and then routes to other areas, and then finally we might get some external routes. Let's get a deeper understanding of how we start things off by gaining an understanding of how we get around our own area. Well, what do we call this? We call that intra within area routing. So routing within our area, that's intra-area routing. Now, what LSA types make up intra-area routes? We need to know this. OSPF LSA types 1 and 2 comprise all knowledge about how to get around our own area. So types 1 and 2. So there are two of these. And to understand OSPF LSA types 1 and 2, we need to think in terms of, well, what are these? Jigsaw puzzles, right? Jigsaw puzzle pieces. How do we think about jigsaw puzzle pieces? Well, these are small, and when assembled together, they build out a picture of something. They interlock together in a prescribed manner. So there's a right way to join these up together, and there's a wrong way. Just like puzzle pieces, LSA types work really kind of the same way. Now, there are two fundamental different puzzle pieces that we see on the screen. There's kind of the outie, and then there's the innie. This really does equate to LSA types 1 and 2, but which one is which? Well, LSA type 1 is really best thought of as the visual that we see on the left. Why is that? Well, because in the center point of a router, the center point of this LSA is the router. And then the nodes, like what we would see in a hub and spoke, the nodes represent connections to subnets. So in this case we have 4, but we could easily have, 2, 3, 25 if we had an unusual topology. And so these spoke elements of the puzzle pieces work like LSA type 1 and what we see in this puzzle piece. But then on the right-hand side, well, that one works more like LSA type 2, where the center point is instead a LAN, or a subnet. And it is routers that we show connecting into a common subnet. That's the high-level picture of this, and if you can understand that high level, then you're 2/3 of the way there. Let's make sure we understand LSA types 1 and 2. LSA type 1 is generated by every single router that runs OSPF. That's important because not all routers generate all LSA types, but this LSA type, yes, if we are running OSPF, we generate that LSA. In terms of the information that it shares, it has information that says, here I am, here's me, here's my router ID, and here are all the prefixes that I connect up to. Here are all the subnets that I connect up to, showing the state and the link type. So in that sense, it does work like the puzzle piece that we see here. The router is in the middle, and the subnets are at the periphery. And all LSA type 1 does is it describes those. I do want you to remember that this is called the router LSA. Type 1, called the router LSA. And the way that I remember these is the name implies what sits in the middle of the information. The router sits in the middle of this information, which represents kind of like a hub and spoke. The router is the hub.